Appropriately enough, this idea hit me out of nowhere in the middle of the night. So, let's give it a shot. Okay, so on They Might Be Giant's second studio album, Lincoln, there's a short song that just may have my favorite set of lyrics of all time. Not because they're full of deep meaning or a beautiful craftsmanship of language or whatever, but because thinking about them led me to decipher the They Might Be Giants' approach to lyricism, and in turn, inspire a lot of my own writing, or at least how I think about my own writing. The song is called Shoehorn with Teeth. It's a minute and 15 seconds long. The lyric sheet consists of 169 words. If you only count the chorus once, it's 90 words. I'll read it for you right now. He wants a shoehorn, the kind with teeth. People should get beat up for stating their beliefs. He wants a shoehorn, the kind with teeth, 'cause he knows there's no such thing. He asks a girl if they can both sit in a chair, but he doesn't get nervous, she's not really there. Tour the world in a heavy metal band, but they run out of gas, the plane can never land. What's the sense in ever thinking about the tomb when you're much too busy returning to the womb? I just cannot think about this song without getting giddy. If you're not sure why, that's understandable, but let me try to explain why I think this is so perfect. But first, I'd like to talk a little about how we as listeners and critics tend to read and judge lyrics. Think about this question. How do you know when lyrics are great? Not just good, great. Lyrical taste is about as wide as musical taste, but if you were to pool the answers of everyone on Earth, there would definitely be massively agreed upon commonalities. Now, I don't have the resources to conduct that poll, but just judging from my own experience, I would say that most people would agree that lyrics are great if they're meaningful. Well, okay, listening public, question number 2. What gives words and phrases a meaning? If the poll was to be conducted again on this subject, I imagine the most popular answer would be, the people who invented the words, silly! They made the word, so they decide what it means. Or, if they're clever and remember that words can actually change meaning over time, they'll say, what an up-to-date, academically approved dictionary says the word means, because that best represents how we as a society use those words. Well, okay, you expert you, let's keep that in mind. Now to discern some lyrics. Just a second, let me get my tea and monocle. We have a text called Shoehorn with Teeth. In the chorus, we have the story of a male who feels the desire to possess a shoehorn with teeth. What a curious item! It is also absurd that disagreement should be resolved through physical force. Returning to the first thought, we learn that the male desires the strange item because its strangeness is due to the fact that it likely does not exist. In the first verse, we see the male inquire after a lady to both sit in a singular chair. He evades any anxiety over potential rejection because, much like the shoehorn, she also does not exist. He then embarks on a worldwide journey with his compatriots who play heavy metal music, but they run out of gas, so the plane can't the plane would crash if they ran out of gas! What an unmeaningful waste of language these lyrics are! So, now that I've obviously completely non-facetiously come to this conclusion, how can I still claim to love Shoehorn with Teeth? Well, it should be obvious to you. It's not supposed to be read literally. It's goofy and absurd, like all They Might Be Giants lyrics. This is true. But a dictionary isn't gonna tell you that. This is the first half of this little mental concoction I've narrowed down. Use determines meaning. This is fairly obvious. It's like pre-101 linguistic stuff. But how often do you really think about it? Words, in and of themselves, are gibberish. They're nonsense. They're lip-flappy mouth noises. They only mean anything because we, the speakers, say they do. If you say a word means something totally different from the commonly accepted definition, you are of completely sufficient authority to say that. The only reason why you probably don't do that is because it makes communicating with people who do use the accepted meaning much harder. But it runs even deeper than that. There's also meanings attached to certain words and concepts that we don't consciously think about or even apply very often, but are unmistakably there. For an example, let's go back to the song. How old is the protagonist? They never say directly, but there's some things that they imply that actually do give us a general sense. The protagonist, culturally speaking, is instantly flagged as younger than an adult in the first verse. He asks a girl if they can both sit in a chair, but he doesn't get nervous, she's not really there. Like, you read that and you instantly think of someone in middle or high school. Or maybe you don't, and my point is terrible. But I did drop this on a few of my friends and they all gave me that effective answer. There is nothing uniquely about middle and high school in the idea of being anxious about asking a girl out. This can and has happened to people of every age range, but culturally, since school is the hooking up time and adulthood is the settling down time, as well as the tumultuous emotions that come with puberty that can often invoke anxiety, getting nervous about talking to a potential romantic partner is something that we've all just kind of collectively decided is a young person thing. And you didn't even notice. And take the second verse. Who wants to run away from home and go play in a heavy metal band more than a stereotypically bratty, rebellious teenager? And the third verse. Who seriously thinks about death less than teenagers? I don't mean in the forlorn, each day we die a little more, cynical sense. I mean seriously thinking about the possibility of their death. They're too old for the concept to have any novelty, and they're too young for it to have any real luster over their lives. And of course, I think I speak for most teenagers when I say that there's very much a sense of wanting to hit a reset button and go back to childhood before they realize that the world was terrible. And let's go back to the chorus. If there is ever a person to think that people with ideas that they disagree with should be beat up, it would be a very angry, socially conscious teenager. We are partway at getting at why I love these lyrics, and these conclusions lead straight to it. Emotional absurdism. Emotions don't make sense. They can react to irrationality, but they are separate from it. As such, they can never really properly be expressed through a medium as concrete as language if you're going for the direct route. As a result, poets and writers often describe emotions in abstract terms, usually by way of comparison or illustration. And this is more effective. I think we can all agree that "I'm so sad, so very, very sad" isn't quite as stirring as "oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew." But this is still absurd. It's literal nonsense. Your flesh isn't going to melt and evaporate no matter how badly you want it to, and even if it did, you'd still be alive, you just have no skin. This may be an accurate representation of how a self-loathing person feels, but it just drives home that emotions and the absurd are inherently inseparable. So, idea. What if the best emotional expression is to embrace that, and just write whatever nonsensical thing makes sense to you in that emotional state? And this is what They Might Be Giants does consistently. Shoehorn with Teeth doesn't necessarily have a meaning. I don't think it's trying to make any kind of coherent statement. But what it does do is capture a mindset. Being young, loathing responsibility, being socially inept, and more than anything, just wanting to escape from a boring, tedious reality. Why does this young man want to shoehorn with teeth? Not for any practical reason, just purely because it doesn't exist. Neither does the girl he asks out, where in the safe confines of his head he cannot be rejected. He's touring with his own band, and they play heavy metal, the music of rebellion, the music of loud catharsis and emotional expression. And following the daydream logic, the plane doesn't land. They're always gonna be flying. What's more dreamlike than flying? This song never fails to put a smile on my face. Not because I had to think super deeply about linguistics or emotionality to fully appreciate it, but because it feels the way I did at one point in my life. There's a comforting familiarity to it. It's not even like a, younger me was such a cynical idiot, cringe thing, because it's They Might Be Giants, which means it's presented with a really humane and vulnerable goofiness. These two ideas, emotional absurdism and linguistic biases, are used by everybody, every day. They Might Be Giants are not unique in their use of these things, but they are unique in how they perfectly balance thoughtfully invoking them in ways that are obviously intentional and drive home a point, with raw emotional spontaneity that feels real and unforced. For another great example on Lincoln, also known as one of the best albums ever, take the song Cage and Aquarium. The title is, obviously, a reference to the Age of Aquarius from the musical Hair, a show about 60s counterculture. They Might Be Giants use the emotional state of disillusionment many counterculturalists went through, seeing what was supposed to be a movement of freedom and individualism, becoming its own set of oddly authoritarian and above all easily dismissed and marketable trends and fashions, instead of a dangerous movement for real change. This is the kind of satire that Frank Zappa mercilessly slathered on the album We're Only In It For The Money, but They Might Be Giants take a less detached approach, making you feel bad for someone who found themselves restricted in a movement about freedom. This is the spawning of the Cage and Aquarium. Don't wait a moment too soon. Used to be different, now you're the same. Yawn as your plane goes down in flames. Again, Linguistically, this means nothing, but emotionally, it speaks to very tangible sensations. Or take I've Got a Match, and how it twists itself into confusing shapes that mirror the emotions of the protagonist. Beat up the cat if you need someone else on the mat. I put a rock in the coffee in your coffee mug. Which one of us is the one that we can't trust? You say that I think it's you, but I don't agree with that. Love people are there. The smell of love is everywhere. You think it's always sensitive and good. You think that I want to be understood. I've got a match. Your embrace and my collapse. Or take the amazing opener, Anna Ang, and how it communicates romantic idealism in the face of solitude. The idea that there is someone out there for you, but you haven't met them, and maybe you never will. All alone at the 64 World's Fair, 80 dolls yelling small girl after all. Who was at the DuPont Pavilion? Why was the bench still warm? Who had been there? Or the time when the storm tangled up the wire to the horn on the pole at the bus depot. And in the back of the edge of hearing, these are the words that the voice was repeating. Anna Ang and I are getting old, and we still haven't walked in the glow of each other's majestic presence. Listen, Anna, hear my words. They're the ones you would think I would say if there was a me for you. That's not to say that all the songs on Lincoln are obfuscated. I really dig the closer, Kiss Me Son of God, for its dig at selfishness in the upper rung of organized religion, and that one's about as subtle as a train wreck to the face. I look like Jesus, so they say, but Mr. Jesus is very far away. Now you're the only one here who can tell me if it's true, that you love me, and I love me. But that's less of a dig at these songs for being more straightforward and more of a lauding of the diversity of They Might Be Giants' lyrical chops. There's a lot of things to love about They Might Be Giants. Their amazing melodies, their geekily humane vocals, their infectiously goofy arrangements, but to me, it's their unmatched ability to stimulate my head and my heart at the same time that makes them one of my favorite musical artists ever. And just in case this video was too lighthearted for you, I'll leave you with one more lyrical bit from Lincoln. Where your eyes don't go. Where your eyes don't go, a filthy scarecrow waves its broomstick arms and does a parody of each unconscious thing you do. When you turn around to look, it's gone behind you. On its face, it's wearing your confused expression. Where your eyes don't go. Where your eyes don't go, a part of you is hovering. It's a nightmare that you'll never be discovering. You're free to come and go, or talk like Curtis Blow, but there's a pair of eyes in back of your head. Every jumbled pile of person has a thinking part that wonders what the part that isn't thinking of. Should you worry when the skull head is in front of you, or is it worse because it's always waiting where your eyes don't go? Terrifying stuff. Thanks for the nightmares, Johns.
He asks a girl if they can both sit in a chair, but he doesn't get nervous. She's not really there. He wants a shoehorn, the kind with teeth, 'cause he knows there's no such thing. Tour the world in a heavy metal band, but they run out of gas. The plane can never land. He wants a shoehorn, the kind with teeth. People should get beat up for stating their beliefs. He wants a shoehorn, the kind with teeth, 'cause he knows there's no such thing. What's the sense in ever thinking about the tomb when you're much too busy returning to the womb? He wants a shoehorn, the kind with teeth. People should get beat up for stating their beliefs. He wants a shoehorn, the kind with teeth, 'cause he knows there's no such thing.